Hello and welcome to our next Keeping the Promise conversation series with candidates for California governor and the disability community. My name is Carl London. I'm a partner at the lobbying firm of London and Gonzalez Advocacy and representative for the Alliance Supporting People with IDD, a group of community-based organizations in California that serve people with IDD and their families. Thank you for joining us for the third conversation in our Keeping California's Promise candidate interview series. You can watch the recordings from the previous two interviews on the Lanterman Coalition website, which is thelantermancoalition.org/events, all one word. The Lanterman Coalition is a statewide alliance of more than 50 disability organizations working together to protect civil rights of Californians with intellectual and developmental disabilities, their families, and the workforce that supports them. For decades, we have advocated to uphold the promise of the Lanterman Act, a landmark civil rights law that guarantees access to services and supports so people with disabilities can live full lives in their own communities. Keeping California's Promise is a nonpartisan educational series designed to help voters better understand where candidates for governor stand on rights for people with disabilities, services to them, and California's long-term commitment to our community. Each candidate is asked the same questions with a focus on accountability, leadership, and the real-life impact of policy decisions, especially in a time of significant federal uncertainty. All candidates for governor have been invited to be a part of this interview series. Scheduling is ongoing. Please check our website, again, thelantermancoalition.org, all one word, to stay updated. I'm pleased now to welcome today's hosts who will lead our conversation. Lendy Ruano is the Director of Person-Centered Culture and Practices at Easter Seals, Southern California. And Lendy is joined by Betty Partida, a disability rights advocate and Vice President of Our Voters Matter. Lendy and Betty, thank you for being here. Please join me on screen. And today we are pleased to welcome Antonio Villaraigosa, candidate for governor of California and a seasoned leader with an accomplished record of public service across local and state government. Mayor Villaraigosa served 3 terms in the California State Assembly, including as Speaker of the Assembly, where he worked to balance the state budget while investing in schools and public safety. He later served 2 terms as mayor of Los Angeles, the first Hispanic mayor in more than a century, where his administration focused on public safety, education reform, economic development, and expanding access and equity across the city. During his time as mayor, the city advanced policies addressing compliance with disability and access laws as part of the broader efforts to ensure equal opportunity for all residents. Throughout his career, the mayor has described himself as a problem solver who builds consensus and works across the aisle to address complex challenges facing Californians. He joins us today as part of Keeping California's Promise, our nonpartisan candidate interview series, to share his priorities for Californians with disabilities and how he plans to protect and strengthen the promise of the Lanterman Act. It is my pleasure to welcome Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Carl. It's good to see you again. I saw you a couple of weeks ago, I think it was.
Yep.
And of course, I've known you for a very, very long time, since 1994. And it's good to be with all of you. Buenas tardes. Soy Antonio Villaraigosa. For those of you who speak Spanish, I speak Spanish, but since you have an interpreter, we'll keep this in English, if that makes sense. And thank you for having me.
We're pleased to have you, and it's great to see you, old friend. I'm going to turn things over now to Lendy and Betty now to conduct our interview.
Great. Thank you, Carl. And thank you for joining us today, Mayor Villaraigosa. I'd like to take just a brief minute to introduce myself. My name is Lendy Ruano, and I am a female with medium length dark brown hair wearing a green turtleneck top. My background is in office with an Easter Seals logo in the background. And I am a director of person-centered culture and practices here at Easter Seals of Southern California. I've had the privilege of working alongside the disability community for nearly 10 years now, building cultures rooted in inclusion, dignity, and respect. This work is also deeply personal to me as someone with a non-apparent disability and a sister, an aunt, and a daughter to people with disabilities. I strive to educate communities on inclusive practices while empowering individuals with lived experience to lead, influence, and shape systems that truly reflect their voices. And I'm honored today to be joined by Betty Partida. So I will go ahead and pass the mic on to Betty.
Hi, it's nice to meet you, Mayor. Um, I'm excited to spend some time with you today. And like all people said, I am Betty. I am Vice President of Our Voices Matter. I'm a sub-advocate. It's a sub-advocacy group within Easter Seals. Um, I encourage my peers to speak up for themselves.
Thank you, Betty. Before we get started with questions, Mayor Villaraigosa, are there a few words that you would like to share?
First of all, over the years, I've worked with Easter Sales and worked with the disability rights community. My sister was at Protection and Advocacy, and I worked for the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, where we had jurisdiction over people with disabilities in federal government. So I'm well aware of the issues that you all advocate for, and for the for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And it's an honor to be here with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Betty, I believe you have the first question, so I'll pass it over to you.
As a voting citizen, it is important that to me that candidates engage with people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. What personal and professional experience have you had with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families?
Well, first of all, thank you, Betty, for that question. I see you're from Van Nuys. I guess both of you are in the LA area, and that's great. Almost every family has been touched with developmental and intellectual disabilities. I have a number of family members that are on the spectrum, and I can tell you some more than others. And I can tell you that I've worked with many people who have had to advocate for their kids. I've worked with the Autism Society. I've worked with the Help Group. I've worked over the years with a number of organizations that are advocating for these people. And as I said, I worked in the federal government. So I have a long history. And, from time to time, even though I was mayor of LA and not over the school district, people would call me and ask me to advocate on their behalf for their kids who were autistic or had, developmental or intellectual disabilities. And I always, I never said to them, well, that's not my job. I'm the mayor. That's the school district. I always picked up the phone and called and tried to help. And I have a number of friends whose children, particularly, autistic, who now are functioning because their parents advocated for them and because there were organizations like yours. And so I actually hired people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. I think it's called the Buddy Program. My recollection was a program that had, businesses and governmental agencies hiring folks and I did, and had a great experience with them, by the way.
That's good. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for answering my question. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Betty.
Next question is, thanks to my mom and my and other allies, I learned that my peers and I do have a voice. Other times, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities often to forget. Today we face an ongoing fight for civil and human rights and justice. How have you shown a commitment to fight for civil rights?
Well, it feels like a softball question, and I'll tell you why. At 15 years old, I started fighting for our rights. I grew up on the east side of Los Angeles, where a lot of times we had secondhand books, secondhand decks, teachers that had been pushed out of schools in more affluent areas. And I helped to lead the walkouts. I started the Black Student Union and the United Mexican American Students. I led the effort, the Great Boycott at my school, and was involved in the Great Boycott throughout the years. I was standing up for immigrants, not just lately with these horrific ICE raids, but when I was 19 years old and didn't speak a lick of Spanish, I knew I had a responsibility to fight for them. So for 25 years before I got elected, I was a civil rights activist and leader. I was president of the ACLU. I worked at the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, whose responsibility was to enforce discrimination laws in employment. I have been my whole life fighting for civil and human rights and justice, and that includes disability rights, as I said. And so I continued doing that in the legislature when I was speaker and I was mayor. As I said, we hired a number of people with both developmental and intellectual disabilities, and they worked out fine with us. So I'm absolutely committed to the fight. And that's why I'm so involved now in this fight with these ICE raids, which are reprehensible and a threat to our democracy.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for answering my questions. I really appreciate it. Okay.
You're welcome, Betty. Thank you.
And I believe I have that.
You got a good smile, Betty.
Oh, thank you.
Smile.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And I believe, so if you live in California, we all know that affordable housing in California is a statewide crisis. However, people with developmental disabilities, most of whom have very limited incomes, are oftentimes underrepresented, and talks about solutions. What would you do about that?
Well, I'm a big believer in having a broad cross-section of stakeholders. I believe that housing is a right, not a privilege, that everyone should have shelter and housing, and that includes the intellectually and developmentally disabled community, not just, obviously the homeless and the poor. And my whole life, as I said, I have fought for that. And when I was mayor, I did more affordable housing in 8 years than the 12 years before me, more homeless housing than the 12 years before me, more market rate housing than the 12 years before me. If you remember, downtown had 20,000 people when I became mayor, and by the time I left, it was 60,000 people. But that means when we're building our housing, we have to bring in everyone. We have to make sure that the housing we build particularly the new housing, has access for the developmentally disabled. And we have to make sure, in order to do that right, that you all have a voice when we're making those decisions. And I intend to provide that voice. It's the right thing to do. And it's the only thing I would do, frankly. So.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, you're right. We do need to have a voice on that table, right? So my next question for you, family members
that
often
means
say,
that means
sorry, go ahead.
Betty, of course, Lendi would be there because she's an expert in those issues. But that means people like you, Betty, should be there too, to really tell the stories. Obviously Lendi has, background in some of the legalities, but we need to hear those anecdotal stories of just how difficult it is for the development and the intellectually disabled to find that kind of housing.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more, Mayor. Thank you. My next question. Family members often play the role of primary caregiver for their child, their sibling, or even their spouses with a disability. On a personal level, I am my older sister's legal conservator, and my mother is my disabled father's primary caregiver. What proposal do you have to better support families whose work and devotion makes it possible for their loved ones to remain at home?
Well, again, sometimes I'm kind of feeling like you're asking questions that feel a bit of a softball, and I'll tell you why. I'm the author of IHSS. I authored that bill in '98. And I've said to the IHSS workers with SEIU and AFSCME, I went to visit them. Both unions took me to different houses where people are working with people with disabilities, older people, people with other issues that require care. And as you said it, Lendi, many times those people are family members. And what I've said is they have to eat. Now we're looking at somewhere between 18 and $30 billion deficit. The next governor is going to have to make really tough, hard choices. But I'm committed to, because we save money. With you taking care of your sister and your mom taking care of your dad, what we have, we'd otherwise have to have them in some nursing facility, which the state or Medi-Cal would have to pay for. So you're actually saving people money when you do this. And I believe government has to work for everyone, but it particularly has to work for the people that don't have a voice and the locked out and the marginalized. And so I can tell you this, there will be cuts, but I am looking to expand support for IHSS because it actually has dividends, economic dividends, and it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Next question for you. 10 years ago, I began my career in disability services as a direct support professional, a role that remains one of the most meaningful professions I have held. A direct support professional is far more than someone who assists with daily care. They're individuals who empower others, who promote community integration, and actively contribute to improve quality of life. The direct support professional workforce is truly the lifeblood of the intellectual and developmental disabilities service community, yet it is dangerously low in numbers. What are the best ways through public policy to promote, attract, and maintain people seeking to work in this field that competes poorly within a larger labor market impacted by other industries having wage floors like the fast food industry?
Well, I think it's, we have an economy that is not working for enough people. People in fast food industry oftentimes need to work at 2 fast food chains to be able to pay rent and afford this state. And one of the issues I've talked about from the beginning is that we have to make this state more affordable. At the same time, you're providing a service, much like the IHSS worker. And it's a service that if you weren't providing, these people would probably be on the street, or the state would have to provide for. And I don't have a plan right now. I can't tell you that I have a plan on that. Know a little more about IHSS. But if we want to recruit more people, you've got to figure out why they're not coming. And if they're not coming because you don't pay enough, because you're paying them, wages that they can't survive on, then it seems to me that we need to look at how we improve on that. I think we should look at obviously bring in the advocates like yourself, the clients like Betty, but also survey the field. What are other states doing? Where is it working? What are other countries doing? Where is it working? And, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are places where it works, and we should be looking at adopting that. By the same token, what works. By the same token, we should have metrics and dashboards to see. You don't just want to throw money at a problem. You want to invest in solutions. And Carl introduced me as a proven problem solver. Now, he was reading off notes, and it wasn't necessarily his opinion, but I know him well enough to know that he knows when I was Speaker of the Assembly, I was always standing up for the marginalized, the disabled community, the communities of color, the poor, and I did as mayor. But when you're a chief executive, you have to balance. So I can't say we're going to fix all the problems. But on this one, I'd want to hear from you. I'd want to look at what's working in other places. And I want to put a plan to improve. It wouldn't be a plan necessarily overnight to fix all the things that are broken, but it would be a plan that people feel some comfort that you're not invisible, that somebody is listening, that somebody cares, and that somebody intends to, the leader of this state intends to do something about it.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate you saying that you're willing to bring people like Betty and myself to the table. Thank you for saying that. And due to time, Betty, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to you for your next question.
We know that special education cuts have been taking place. As Governor of California, what would be your approach and commitment to our K-12 students in special need education?
Betty, I was mayor of LA, and the mayor doesn't have any jurisdiction over the school district. And yet, when I became mayor, 1 out of 3 schools were failing. The achievement gap was wider than it had ever been. And I challenged it. Many of those kids who weren't making it were in special ed. Many of those kids were poor. And I challenged a broken system. I challenged powerful interests because I knew it was the right thing to do. By the time I left, we went from 1 out of 3 failing schools. Where you live, the San Fernando Valley wanted to secede from LA Unified. By the time I left, nobody was talking about secession. We had a 60% increase in the graduation rate. When I worked at the United Teachers of Los Angeles, I represented people in special ed teachers who were working at and with special ed students. Because we had a belief that it was important to integrate those students. Now, and I can tell you this, I'm no expert. I told you my sister worked at Protection and Advocacy, and I did enforce our laws with respect to special education, special developmental and intellectual disabilities in the federal government. But I'll tell you this, like the last answer, I think what you'll see is a governor who cares, a governor who will sit down with you all, a governor who will listen and work with you, and who understands that we have to strengthen those laws so that they work. Always understanding that, there's finite resources, but, it doesn't cost money to listen. It doesn't cost money to care. And it doesn't cost money, outrageous sums of money to put a plan together and start working on things. And that's what I intend to do with respect to these issues.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Brad.
And I do believe I have room for one more question.
Sure.
Thank you. Last question, and I know earlier you did mention that you hired people with intellectual and developmental disabilities from the Buddy program. Something that comes up a lot when I visit adult day services and when I interact with people with lived experience is that even though California declares employment as the top priority for this population, employment rates of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities have remained relatively flat. How can the state support employment opportunities and itself be a model employer for this population?
I intend to work with you. I'll tell you what, we're going to put a plan together. We're going to put a plan together that says everybody who can and is willing to work should. And there are jobs where it doesn't matter if you have a developmental or intellectual disability. And we ought to explore putting a plan together that puts goals on me. And we should have dashboards on me. I tell people I'd rather have 4 transformational years than 8 mediocre ones. I intend to shake it up.
Sure.
And I intend to fix what's broken, not overnight. That doesn't happen. But I would commit to working with you all to put a plan together to increase the participation rate of people with the intellectual and developmental disabilities in government, and also encourage the private sector. Again, we had good experiences in the city with those folks. And I could tell Betty's ready to go work. I could tell.
I believe she is. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your time. Thank you for answering your questions. And I will pass it on to Carl now. Betty, I don't know if you want to say anything else to wrap it up.
Well, thank you for joining us today. It was a really, really pleasure meeting you.
¿Hablas español, Betty?
Claro que sí.
Ah, claro que sí. ¿Naciste aquí en los Estados Unidos o en México?
Yo nací aquí en Estados Unidos.
Pues yo soy tercera generación americano de herencia mexicana. Mi familia vino hace más de 100 años, en 1903, y entiendo muy bien que el papel de primero no es golpear tu pecho y decir soy tan único. El papel de primero es abrir la puerta por los demás, y eso incluye la gente con disabilidades intelectuales y de desarrollo, ¿no? So gracias, thank you, and it's great to meet you. And I'm sorry to Tiffany, I forgot. I saw you interpreting, but if you don't speak Spanish, that's right. It's hard, a little hard. I'm sorry, but Lendi can translate. So thank you.
Thank you. Muchas gracias.
De nada.
It's been a great conversation today. Thank you, Mayor Villaraigosa, for taking the time to join us. Online, there were a couple of questions. I think you primarily answered them. There was one consideration about the fact that the president of the administration passed, the big, beautiful bill, HR 1, and that it's going to result in potential cuts to services in California. I think you mentioned that we're going to have to make some tough decisions in light of that. But I think we greatly appreciate that you have said that you'll involve this community in your decision making, and we appreciate.
Let me speak to that since they
please.
didn't ask that question.
Please
speak to that. Look, the next governor, and I think the reason why a lot of people support my candidacy is because I've had big jobs. I've been Speaker of the California State Assembly. I had to balance two budgets with a surplus, with a Republican and a Democratic governor. As mayor of the largest city in California, the second largest city in the country during the recession, I had to make tough calls, and I'll have to make tough calls as governor. But I can tell you this, these are the kinds of programs that are the last, not the first, to be impacted. That big, ugly bill is already going to hurt this community and many communities. And I'm going to do everything we can to grow our economy and to make cuts that don't have a deleterious impact on the poor, on communities of color, and on the intellectually and developmentally disabled.
Mr. Mayor, again, thank you for joining us today. Thanks for everybody who's watching this online. We appreciate the engagement and back and forth and questions. These conversations matter, and everyone's participation helps Californians with intellectual and developmental disabilities, their families, my family, and the people that support them remain in our forward vision as that great state looks toward the future. On behalf of the Lanterman Coalition and our partner organizations, we greatly appreciate you for taking the time to be a part of this important conversation and to share your perspectives with the disability community.
Thank you, Carl. Bye-bye.
Yeah, great to see you.
Bye, Betty. Bye, Lindy.